Welcome back to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. And I'm here with Clint Dreger, and we are so excited to hear Clint's story tonight. And we want to thank you, Clint, for being here tonight. We're just happy that you're here, and we're excited to hear what you have to share to us tonight. And we know that it's going to be a blessing to us. I can't believe that we are halfway through our series already. So we've had 5 nights together. They have been such a blessing, and we've learned a lot. And I know we've grown a lot, and we have 5 more nights. So it is going by fast, but we still have plenty of nights left for you to tune in live. And last night we heard how to break the chain of fear. And so tonight we're going to continue this journey with learning the 5th breakthrough that we must have to experience an unchained life. So continue to share this news with your friends, your neighbors, your family. We want them to tune in. There's lots more opportunity for them to tune in live. But first, we want to make sure that everyone has registered. This helps us, of course, with communication, with getting the word out about our series, and it enters you into our drawing each night for a free gift. So as we've been sharing, and I don't know if that number is up on the screen, but it should be. It should be coming up on the screen. To register, you want to text Unchained to 534-444-7183. Everyone's information, of course, is completely confidential, and it'll only be used during this series. And once you've registered, you'll receive a text each day reminding you of that evening's presentation. We need you to register nightly so that we see who's watching and to enter you into the nightly giveaways. I know that some of you said, "Oh, I've registered," but you have to register every night so that you can be entered in and we know who's watching live. Our free giveaway is Richie Halversen's book, The Darkness Will Not Overcome. So just text Unchained to the number on your screen and you'll be entered into that. It's an amazing book, and I know it'll be a great gift for you. Also, we would like to ask you to please hit that like button and that share button. And this lets us know, of course, that this is a program that is being a benefit to you. And as you share that, more people will be able to benefit from this program, because everyone struggles with addiction on some level. And we all know someone who either struggles with addiction, or we know someone who struggles with addiction. So please help us get the message out. Well, like I said, we have Clint here with us. And Clint, thank you so much for being here.
No, it's a privilege.
And we've been talking, we've been going for 5 nights straight now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking about addiction, of course. And, the question came up, well, where does addiction come from? How does addiction start? And I was thinking of, pain, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I find that interesting because I'm going to come with this in 2 different perspectives. One as an addict, an alcoholic in recovery, and then the other one as a counselor, because that's what I do for a living. I'm a substance abuse counselor. I've been doing this since 1997.
Wow.
And stuff. So it's been a minute.
Yeah.
And stuff. I've learned a few things along the way, not only about myself, but from other people. And it's really important that you listen to what other people have going on. That's really key and stuff. We're born to hear, but we're not. To listen is an acquired skill. So
that is for sure.
I listen to people, and one of the main things that happen, I think this is quite interesting, is that majority of my clients would go, "Where does it start? I don't know where to start," and they hate my answer. Is because I'll tell them, "Well, follow the pain." And they're going, "What?" And I find it's interesting is because 2 nights ago, my wife, we were sitting at the table, and she asked me, she goes, "Clint, where do you think that all addictive behavior typically comes from? Do you think it comes from pain?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll agree with that in part, but pain comes from somewhere, and it comes from loss." I found out anyways. And so in my journey of recovery, I was reading a book by David D'Amico, The Spaces of Rage, because my first addiction was anger.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he had mentioned that in that is that there's the loss of safety,
Mm.
loss of loss of safety, loss of purpose, loss of significance, loss of eligibility,
Mm.
loss of authenticity, loss of dignity, loss of hope, and hope is what helps us endure crisis,
Yeah.
and loss of power. And all abuse in any shape or form is disempowering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into my story.
Great.
Is loss of power. And, as a man growing up, well, a young boy growing up, but really quick, I was what they would refer to as a parentified child. I was the hero of the family. I took the place of the missing father and stuff.
Mm.
And then in that, grew up, like I said, really quick. And I grew up in Canada and had 4 brothers, 2 sisters. Most of the time, my father was absent, but when he was
Mm.
home, it was okay for a few days, but then it got really, really abusive, and it was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and physically
Mm.
abuses. And so
Was he an addict too?
both my parents were.
Both of your parents were.
Because when Dad came home and he found out some of the things that was going on that Mom was doing while he was away,
Mm.
he drank.
Yeah.
And so when Mom was healing from her bruises and emotional damage and stuff, she was popping pills and drinking.
Okay.
So I learned at a young age, it was a modeled behavior. And so I learned at a young age that when you have pain, you drink or you do a drug.
Oh.
And then because of the abuse and stuff and things that were going on in the system, I never really felt that I fit in. And for years, I never really put the dots together, or if I did, I really didn't want to admit it.
Mm.
And stuff. And my issue, my pain came from abandonment and rejection, because all through my life, I had felt that until I got into recovery and started healing.
Mm.
And well, they say that hurt people, but healed people heal people.
Mm.
We tend to
Yeah.
leave out that last part, and I don't believe in cure. I think the only thing that's cured is probably ham, but I've been healed,
I like that. Yeah.
And so with that, I started this, well, I mean, it just went crazy. I was in and out of trouble all the time. I developed a very smart mouth, developed a lot of anger, but I said anger was my first addiction because it worked for me. It got you out of my face. I could
Mm.
intimidate, manipulate, justify, rationalize, and get
Mm.
anything I wanted by using anger
Mm.
and stuff. And so with that anger, the more and more trouble I got into and stuff. And then we left Canada and ended up coming here to North Bend, Washington,
Okay.
where I was introduced to God through
Mm.
my grandmother, who was a Seventh-day Adventist.
Wow.
And I didn't know it till many years afterwards that my grandmother also spent many, many years in her addiction of alcoholism and stuff until
Oh,
she became
okay.
an Adventist
Wow.
and stuff. But my grandmother was always worshiping, always praying, always having devotions, and was a health fanatic. She wanted the veggies, I wanted the meat.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, which surprisingly enough is that as much as I resented my grandmother um, for the prayers, the devotion, and the structure of her Christian religious life and stuff, and how that impacted me, didn't take effect until many, many years later. So I went to
Mm.
church. I went to Christian schools for up to about 6 years of my life and stuff, and then fell out. One of the things is that I started drinking really, really young. I was about 10 years old, and I was introduced to alcohol.
Mm.
And then I
10 years
started,
old. Wow.
yeah, I knew I had a drinking problem by the time I was 12. I figure any kid that's 12 years old going to a Christian school, sneaking empty Gerber baby food bottles full of wine into school so while the other kids played, I could drink during lunchtime. I
Yeah.
probably had a problem.
So you would say age 12 is when your addiction started, would
Yeah,
you?
it's when it
Okay.
really kicked in and I recognized it
Wow.
and stuff. And then, of course, in the church and stuff, and then somebody told me, because they found out that I'd been drinking and that the bad behavior and stuff and being a smart mouth and stuff, is that you don't belong here in the
Mm.
church. And so, okay, so I left the church for
Wow.
18 years before I stepped foot back in it again. And then with that, I grew up so fast, and my thought was is that, everything that was going on in life, what would a man do? What would a man do? What would a man do? Well, I couldn't handle the relationship between my mom and the men that she was with and were married to and stuff. So at the age of 13, I got this bright idea. I can do this on my own. And so I told my mother, I says, hey, here's the deal. Either sign the papers for an emancipated minor or I go to juvie because I'm out of here.
Wow, at 13.
At 13. So she did it, which was another issue of abandonment and rejection to me.
Yes.
The allowing me to drink and know that I was drinking and stuff was another issue of abandonment and rejection to me. So at 13, I left, was gone for a short period of time.
And your dad was already out of the picture?
Oh, way long
Okay.
out of the picture
Okay.
and stuff. When we left Canada, I was 6.5 and he was already out of the picture and stuff.
Okay.
So I was gone. I had some traumatic experience happen. I put somebody's life in danger and stuff. And then I rushed back home. I was 14. And I tried to go back into high school. Somebody tried to hurt me, and I hurt them really bad. And so that got me kicked out of school. So I'm going, well, what else would a man do? Come on, you're an emancipated minor. You're a man. So the first thing I did was go down to get a driver's license. I went and got a job. I got a house. And then I'm thinking, wow, you got money, you got a car. What else does a man do? It's like, well, he settles down. He finds himself a woman. He gets married.
How old were you?
Yeah, she was 14.
Wow.
So I was 14, almost 15, and got married.
No way.
Reno, Nevada. Had emancipated.
I was going to say, how did that happen? Where did you have to go to
Yeah.
be able to marry that young?
Reno,
Wow.
Nevada and stuff. So I got married. We had our first child when I was late 15. Struggling, alcohol all the way, major problems, divorced when I was 17. And then preparing my way to go to prison by the time I was 18. Now, notice I said preparing the way because I could have prepared to go down a different path because I knew, I knew and stuff, but preparing the way to go to prison and stuff. And sure enough, it happened. I was 18 years old, got wrapped up in this deal where, this guy's like, come rob me, and we'll split the money, plastic gun, walked into a store, robbed them, and they got me on, conspiracy to commit armed robbery. There's 20 years. Then it went to armed robbery, which is 20 years. Grand jury indictment came in, said robbery 1, that's 10 years. And they allowed me to plead guilty to theft in the first degree, which was a 5-year gig. And so with that, I ended up in prison.
Would you say that was your rock bottom?
No.
Oh, wow.
Not even.
Wow.
No, I was just getting started.
Wow.
I got into prison, and now this is kind of funny because I was 139 pounds in prison. And the first thing that happens to me is I walk into the hallway. I got this guy that's 280 pounds, 6'3", and he goes, "You're pretty. You're my girlfriend." So I broke his nose, and I spent 30 days in the whole solitary confinement.
Wow.
Later on in prison, fights all the time. When I got out of solitary confinement, I bulked up. I went from 139 pounds to 197 pounds in about 6 months. So I was pretty buff. And stuff. But then I had an altercation with a guard in prison, and it was a little dispute over food. You take it, you got to eat it. Well, I wasn't going to play the game, so he grabbed me and I about beat him half to death with a metal tray that my food was served on.
The police officer?
Yes.
Wow.
So then I spent 9 months in solitary confinement, and when I got out, they found out I was provoked, so I didn't get charged with attempted murder. His buddy came along about 30 days later and was sniffing a letter and saying, "Hey, you're not getting this. You beat up my friend, but she sure does smell pretty," So I said, "What did you say to me?" And he came right up to this to the cell, and I reached out and grabbed him and smashed him up against the bars a few times. But it's just my anger, and a lot of fights inside the prison system. I got out of prison.
How long? How long were you there?
I was sentenced to 5, did 3, and stuff. And then on a pre-release, I was introduced to a girl that I had dated prior to going into prison and stuff. And the interesting thing was is that I grew up believing that I was unwanted and unlovable. That that you're never going to amount to anything, you're never going to be anything. Don't even attempt to try. So self-fulfilled prophecy is that, well, let me prove that to you.
Right.
If you say I'm bad, let me just show you how bad I can really be.
Right. Right.
So so we married out of the prison system and the alcohol and stuff, trying to settle. Nobody would let me live my conviction down, like places that I worked. They'd hold that over your head and stuff, and I just wasn't going to play and stuff. So I got involved with some wrong people hanging out at the bars and stuff, and then some guy that I met said, "Hey, look, I can tell that you struggle and you drink a lot. Have you ever thought of doing meth? Because meth kills brain cells." And I was, really? Like, no brain, no pain. I won't feel anything. Give me the meth.
Wow.
You
How old
know,
were you now?
I was 22, 23.
Okay.
Mhm,
Okay.
23. And then I was working a job where I had this potential to do some underwater welding for a company and stuff. And but I was snorting this meth and stuff. And so I went to a doctor and asked him, told him straight up, this is what I plan on doing. I plan on continuing to do meth, but I want this job. And he goes, well, son, the only thing I can tell you is that use a needle. And so I was going, that's what I thought too. It's like, what? What do you mean use a needle? So I started using a needle, and I became an IV drug user of methamphetamine for 10 years of my life. I went through about a year of cocaine, but it almost killed me twice and stuff. And then I spent about a year in heroin and stuff. I didn't like it. It was too much of a downer, you know.
Yeah.
And then so the meth, and then I got into where it was I had to support my habit, so I started dealing it, and then I started cooking it, and then I started supplying the chemicals to make it, and then I found out where the big money was, and because of my anger, which fit right in, was that you make more money by working for a drug dealer to go collect his money.
Oh.
So I went and did that for a few years.
Wow.
But it got to the point where the last few years of my using was ridiculous. I just could not kill this pain, and it's like every time I tried to fill this void that I had inside me, it's like there was less of me and more of the garbage.
Yeah.
More of the garbage and stuff. So my rock bottom finally came where my wife, after 5 years, had separated.
This is your second wife.
My second wife
Okay.
now. We had separated. I found another girl. Actually, I left her for another girl because my deal was also women and stuff. And it's like if I knew that I was going to this relationship was going to end, I already had something already out there ready that I could go to. So I did, and I had this other woman for about 7.5 years, and again, it just got totally crazy, ridiculous. I moved from Salem, Oregon, which was deemed to be the methamphetamine capital of the United States at the time. And I moved down to Eugene, Oregon, which is only about 60 to 80 miles away. And I stayed clean and sober for about 8 months,
Okay.
working in a mill. So it was yeehaw. And then later on, I found out that more than half the people in the mill were doing meth. And so it's like, okay, I got to try this. There's got to be a difference between Salem and Eugene. Come to find out that Eugene is where they manufactured it. They just shipped it up to Salem to sell it. And so I just jumped right from the frying pan right out into the fire and stuff.
Yeah.
So got mixed up with the wrong people, and my kind of people at the time. This sounds horrible, but my kind of people was like Mike, who got shot in the chest 3 times and stuff, and he lived long enough to pick up a gun, get in his car, go chasing people down, and kill them. Archie, who spent 15 years in federal prison and stuff, had his throat cut twice. Those are my
Wow.
kind of people.
Yeah.
I loved the fight scene.
Yeah.
The guns blazing, the knives, and all that stuff. Just absolutely loved it. Well, I started my own business. It was very successful, and then I lost it all. I lost the wife. I lost the girlfriend. I lost everything and stuff. And I ended up in this field with a gun to my head and stuff. And at one time I had 46 handguns, but this one here was special because I packed it around for 11 years. The only reason why I kept it is because it never misfired. So I'm really despondent. I'm out in the middle of a field, pouring down rain and stuff. I got this gun in my head, and I'm talking out loud. It's like, give me one good reason why I shouldn't do that. and all of a sudden a lightning bolt hit the ground 10 feet from me.
Wow.
And now I'm mad. I'm going,
Wow.
you missed.
Mm.
Check this out. You're not in control. I am.
Wow.
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
And so I emptied that, put another bullet in the chamber, stuck the gun to my head, and pulled the trigger, and the gun just fired again.
Clint, that's amazing.
I got to tell you, it broke my spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So I laid there in a mud puddle, curled in a fetal position, cried like a baby and stuff. And when
Wow.
I came out of that, it's like, okay, God, I know this is you. So here's the deal. I've always thought that I was a leader. And today I want to be a follower. Take me.
Wow.
I'll follow.
Clint.
Led me out of Oregon up to Washington to see my mother, who I hadn't seen in 5 years. And she's like, you're coming down. And she was kind of snooty about it. And I go, yeah, that's right. But hey, look. And she goes, and you're not staying here. And I said, well, nobody asked. I'm on a mission. See, I'm going to go up and see my dad. I'm going to hurt him real bad. And
this is after you'd given your life to God?
Well, after I made the commitment,
Yeah.
because I got this message, you need to seek your father. I was going, yeah, I need to seek my father.
Yeah, you're so confused.
And so, there's a lot of confusion after recovery,
yes,
and stuff. So from there to living in the woods for 4 months to get my head right, God was so with me. I'd never felt closer to God in all my life than that.
Wow.
That experience right there. And then my mom, come to church, come to church, come to church. And it's like, get off me. And she goes, come to church. And I did. And the preacher, I felt like he was talking just to me because he started talking about the Heavenly Father. And I knew right then and there that it wasn't my paternal father that I was looking for. It was my Heavenly Father. Oh, I'm telling you what. Got me right here. And I started opening up. I started letting go. And then I had some unfinished business down in Oregon, which was some driving charges and stuff. And so when I went down there to take care of business, the judge gave me 5 years in Oregon State Penitentiary for felony driving while suspended. And so I'm going, you got to be kidding me. But when I was in there, after about 3 or 4 months, I'm out there kicking dirt on a track. And I heard God speak, because I'm asking him, what am I doing here? This is crazy and stuff. And I heard this voice. And he said, you need to be quiet and listen. And the first thing I'm doing is looking to find out who told me to shut up. Right? And so he's going, listen to the men. And I did. And I started listening to how much alcohol they're going to drink, how much drugs they're going to do, the next crime they're going to commit, because I figured out where they went wrong in the current crime that they were doing time on. I go, you guys are nuts. So I said, okay, hey, look, I need to get back in here, but on a volunteer system. And I had touched base on that just briefly before I actually went to prison and stuff. So I got involved in prison ministry. And while I was in prison ministry,
that's so ironic. I love that.
I know a few of the guys got together and said, Clint, you would make a good counselor. And I go, hey, somebody's going to pay me to run my mouth, and I'll never have to study because I know everything about addiction. Yeah, well, I got to college and found out all I knew was how to use. Yeah. But I went, stuck it out, and I've been an alcohol drug counselor now since 1997.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so you went from being in prison to going into prison ministry and then counseling, helping people in their drug addiction and the things that you had once struggled with. So I want us to kind of, there's a few more questions that I have for you. I want us to kind of pause, and then we're going to listen to Richie's message tonight. Richie's going to be sharing tonight about kind of some things that you've already touched on, about breaking that chain of control. And but I have a few more questions that I just want to kind of ask you about, like how you are using your counseling today, and what other things are you doing today to live that unchained life? I mean, because you have quite the story and how God turned that around. I mean, how he saved you multiple times to show you that you are lovable. You are worthy of love. I love you and I have a purpose for your life. And I'd love for our viewers to hear kind of the rest of that story. So we're going to come back and hear the rest of Clint's story here in just a few minutes after we hear Richie's talk tonight about how to break that chain of control. So thank you, Richie. We look forward to your presentation.
Welcome to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. The only way I was able to break through the chain that held me back was when I finally was willing to admit, you know what, I don't have all the answers. What I was doing wasn't working. And so I had to start listening to other people who knew things that I didn't know. You know, I knew how to get high, but I didn't know how to get clean. I had to take the cotton out of my ears and I had to put it in my mouth. I remember I had someone at a meeting who told me very quickly early on, I was talking a lot because I had read a lot and I thought I knew a lot. And one of these old timers, is what we called them, told me, Richie, shut up, take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your mouth. You see, I had to be willing to learn something new from someone else. I had to stop acting like I was charged. I needed someone bigger, better, smarter, stronger than me to be in charge. In the book of Mark 5:22, we have an interesting story of someone who was used to being in charge. Jairus was one of the synagogue presidents, it says. He was used to being the leader. He was used to doing all the talking. But if you want to live an unchained life, you have to be willing to let someone else be in charge. You've got to be willing to listen to someone else sometime. In Mark 5:23, Jairus comes up to Jesus. He says, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay hands on her so that she may be made well and live. So check this out. Jairus is telling Jesus how to heal his daughter. But Jairus doesn't know how to heal people. Jairus doesn't know how to perform miracles. Just like I didn't know how to stay clean, Jairus doesn't know what he's talking about. So in Mark 5:22, when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. So he's kneeling. He seems to be kind of praying. He's open to the eye of giving up control. But the very next verse, he starts ordering Jesus around. Have you ever used prayer to try to order God around? Have you ever tried to tell someone else what they need to be doing in their life? In recovery, we say, don't give advice. You know, advice kills. We only share experience, strength, and hope. People don't need advice. They need to hear that you got through something, and they need to hear hope of how they can get through something. We got to be willing to listen to someone else. What does Jairus know about healing? What do you know about living unchained? Before Jesus can give Jairus what he's asking for, Jairus has to let go of the control and give it over to God. Now compare Jairus' request to this centurion who also is asking Jesus to heal someone. Luke 7:7 and 8. It says, I did not presume to come to you, but say the word, Jesus, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and they go, and to another, come, and they come, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. The centurion was a good leader because, you see, he knew how to be led. Before you can ever lead, you got to first learn how to be led. In spite of Jairus, Jesus still goes with him. Man, I am so glad, in spite of some of the dumb things that I've said, I've had good friends who've still been willing to go with me. In spite of our problems, our big egos, in spite of the incessant fighting and debating, Jesus still goes. Instead of telling Jairus, Jesus is going to show Jairus. Some of us, we only learn by being shown. We can't take someone's word for it. We've got to experience the pain for ourselves. Mark 5:25, there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. So here we have another character come into the scene. On the way to Jairus' house, something is getting in the way of Jairus' plan. Man, we hate it when things get in the way of our plans, don't we? But sometimes interruptions are interventions. Sometimes the thing that we think is getting in the way is actually the best possible thing that could happen for us. Man, I can see Jairus pushing Jesus with one hand, come on, Jesus, I got to get you going where I'm going, and he's batting people away with the other hand. Jesus is in a hurry, and it seems like Jesus is taking his time. I wonder, has God ever seemed to take his time in your life? Maybe he's trying to teach you something. Maybe he's trying to show you something. And so this woman in Mark 5:28, she says, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. The Greek word for healed means rescued. You see, God wants to rescue you from what's killing you. God wants to rescue you from whatever is draining you. In Mark 5:26, this woman had suffered much under many physicians. She had spent all she had and was no better. Rather, she grew worse. So think about it. She had tried all kinds of things. I know for me, man, I had tried all kinds of things to quit using opioids. I tried a lot of things to quit all kinds of addictions and to live an unchained life. This woman has tried all kinds of things, but instead of it getting better, it's only growing worse. She had plenty of people's opinions. She had plenty of treatment options. Her purse was full of prescriptions, but she's still bleeding. She's still not enjoying life. Think of all the stuff this woman had to push through to get to Jesus. Man, she had to push through the people telling her it was all in her head. She had to push through all the people who said, you know what, once an addict, always an addict. She had to push through all the critics and the naysayers and the haters. She had to push past the internal voice that says, you're always going to be this way. You're a mess up. You will never live an unchained life. She had to push past the toxic voices in her life. If I can just reach out and touch him, I'll be healed. If I can just tap into something stronger than me. And so she comes up behind him. In the crowd, she touches his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. Check it out. Jesus was able to stop the bleeding no one else could stop. Jesus could fix a problem no one else could fix. You see, we cannot fix our own problem because we are a part of the problem. If we want to live an unchained life, we've got to tap into something stronger than we are. I can't, he can. I think I'll let him. And Jesus realized at once that the healing power had gone out of him. And so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? And the disciples are like, well, what? I mean, Jesus, you see this crowd crushing you and you ask who touched me? But check this out. Jesus knows the difference between someone putting their hands on him to push him or a need that pulls him. And this is why I believe when something pulled at him, instead of pushing him, it changed his direction. You see, that's what separated the woman from Jairus. You see, the woman's need pulled Jesus. Jairus was trying to push Jesus. In John 10:18, Jesus says, look, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. You see, friends, it wasn't the push that put Jesus on the cross. It was his love for us that pulled him there. Stop letting people and problems push you around. Stop letting addiction push you around. Stop letting other people decide what is best for your life. Stop chaining yourself to that toxic relationship. Stop letting them push you and let God pull you into your purpose. Man, in the massive crowd, Jesus can discern one touch. God can feel your loneliness in a crowded room. He can see your brokenness in a broken world. He knows what's draining us, and if we would just reach out and touch him, he'll stop the bleeding. And so Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Meanwhile, I imagine Jairus just kind of looking at his watch. What are you doing, Jesus? Man, I've got something to do. I'm important. This woman had a bleeding problem, which meant, according to that custom, that Jewish custom, she would have been ceremonially unclean. She was unclean. She shouldn't touch Jesus. No doubt, Jairus, being a president of the synagogue, hey, you don't have time to mess with that unclean person. I'm important. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and she fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Check it out. It says the whole truth. Remember, Jairus is in a hurry. The Greek word for whole truth means everything. She tells Jesus everything, every detail. She's been sick for 12 years. She tells the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She tells Jesus every detail. Jairus is tapping his foot, but you see, Jesus will not be pushed around. While this woman is testifying, Jairus' daughter is dying. I don't have time for this, he probably thought. But you know what? I've discovered in life, it's not all about me. It's not all about what I want. At the core of addiction is selfishness. It's not all about you. It's not all about me. You know, sometimes we act like we're the only people with problems. Sometimes we act like we're the only ones that need help. You know, my sponsor once told me in recovery, he said, Richie, I know it may look like the sun rises and sets over your head, but you are not the center of the universe. You see, Jesus is going to deal with Jairus' problem, but he's going to deal with this woman's problem along the way. Jesus is on his way to deal with your problem, but one of the ways he's going to deal with your problem is by dealing with someone else's problem along the way, because your greatest problem is not what you think it is. Your greatest problem, my greatest problem, it's me. And nothing gets me out of me quicker than helping someone else. And we're going to talk about this more in session 9. But to God, no one is more important than anyone else. I don't care the person living up under the bridge or the person in the house with a 5-car garage. No one's more important than anyone else. No one's problems is more important than anyone else. The nameless, unclean Gentile woman is just as important to Jesus as the famous Jewish male leader. You know, too often, like Jairus, we want to tell God what he's going to do, how he's going to do it, and when he's going to do it. But that doesn't work. That's a part of the problem. We're trying to be God instead of letting God be God. Before Jesus can heal his daughter, Jesus has to heal Jairus. Mark 5:35, as he said this, some people arrived from the synagogue, the president's house. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? And so that small glimmer of hope leaves Jairus' eyes. In that moment, he realizes just how small he really is. And that, my friends, is when Jesus can really help him. Sometimes we've got to get knocked off our high horse. Sometimes, we've got to just hit that bottom. Sometimes we've got to fall down for God to finally be able to get through to us. Mark 5:36. But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, do not fear, only believe. Interestingly, the Greek word for overhearing means refused to listen or ignore. Check that out. Jesus ignores what the people say. He looks right into Jairus' hopeless eyes and he says, do not fear, only believe. I don't care what anybody else thinks. God is ignoring the skeptics. He's ignoring the critics, and he's looking at you. Do not fear, only believe. They're not in charge. I am. So the moment we stop limiting God by what we can do, we can start seeing what God can do. 1 Corinthians 2:9 says, no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined what God has prepared for those who love him. Ephesians 3:20 says, God is capable of doing far, far more than we could ever ask or imagine. You see, Jairus came to Jesus for healing, but Jesus was planning something better. Jesus wasn't just planning on a healing. Jesus was planning a resurrection. Man, God's plans for us are always bigger than our plans for us. God's idea for an unchained life, living freely and abundantly, is always bigger. When my first year clean, my sponsor told me to write down all the things I wanted to see, all my plans and goals for living my first year clean. He says, Richie, write down everything that you want to see happen, and I promise you, God's going to blow your expectations to smithereens. Because to be honest, I just wanted to hold a job. I just wanted to get a job. I just didn't want to go away to prison. I started making that list. In a year, when I hit that year mark, man, not only did I have a job, I had my family back. I had my relationships started flourishing again. I started serving in my community. I got so many more things. God's plans for you are always bigger than your plans for you. Mark 5:38, they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child's not dead, but sleeping." And check it out, they laughed at him. Has anyone ever laughed at you? When the scoffers come between Jesus and his miracle, it says that he kicked them out. Whatever is coming between you and your miracle, let God kick it out. Verse 40 says, he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. In ancient Israel, they actually hired mourners, which means many of these people mourning weren't really upset. They were paid to be upset. And that's why they go from crying one moment to laughing the next. You know, there are people in your life who will go from patting you on the back one moment to stabbing you in the back the next moment. And look, I believe in being kind to everyone, but my inner circle is saved for those who want to see God do a miracle. My inner circle, the people that I'm going to spend the most time with, are going to be the people that want to see me succeed, that believe in me. It's time to kick all the fake, pretentious people out of your life because they are coming between you and your miracle. Jairus and his wife are totally overwhelmed by grief. They still can't believe that their little girl is gone. But then she encounters Christ and they find out that death is nothing more than a sleep when it comes to God. Mark 10:27 says, all things are possible with God. Where there is Jesus, there is always a way. Don't ask for a little help. You need more than a little help. All of us do. We don't need help. We need the hand of God to change us, to free us. Mark 5:41, taking her by the hand, he said to her, Talitha kum, which means, little girl, get up. Man, Jesus is saying the same thing to everyone who's watching right now. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get up. Both the bleeding woman and the girl were ceremonially unclean. One was dead, one had a disease. Touch was forbidden, but Jesus reaches out and touches them both. Because you see, until you have an encounter with something stronger than you, then you'll never have that fuller, freer life. The girl lived for 12 years. Think about that. The woman suffered for 12 years. So the beginning of suffering and the beginning of life happened at the same time. When the woman's suffering started, it was the beginning of life for the girl. You see, friends, Christ's suffering was the beginning of our new life. Because he went into the tomb, you and I can come out of the tomb. In order to stop our bleeding, God was willing to come in the flesh and bleed. You want to know what a real leader looks like? You want to know someone you can really trust with your life? Luke 9:51 says, when the days drew near for him to be taken, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. The same hand that healed the woman, the same hand that raised the girl, can touch your life right now, today. Jairus thought he needed Jesus just for his daughter. Maybe you're watching this because you think this is for someone else. We always tend to think in that way, you know, well, I don't struggle with addiction. No. Just as Jairus thought he needed Jesus for his daughter, Jesus had to show Jairus that he needed Jesus just as much. Man, people struggling with addiction aren't the only ones who need to practice these principles. All of us do. You see, Jairus' daughter was not the only one who came back to life that day. So did Jairus. Let God lead your life. Let God be in charge. Stop acting like you know everything. Let someone who knows what they're doing help you, guide you. Stop shortchanging living an unchained life. Allow that chain of ego and pride and self-obsession and control get broken by the breakthrough of humility today. I don't have to control everything. I don't have to have all the answers anymore. The day I started listening and learning is the day I started living an unchained life. God wants the same thing for you right now.
That's good.
It was good. I love that. God's plans are always bigger than your plans, bigger than our plans. God's plans for you are always bigger than your plans for you. Wow. Such a powerful message. Thank you, Richie. I love that concept to kick out whatever is coming between you and your miracle. And I know a lot of the people that we have been interviewing. One gentleman said, his message to the viewers was, "Hey, if your friends are bringing you down, get new friends.
Hmm.
If the friends are bringing you down, if the circumstances surrounding you are hurting you, then remove those circumstances, right?"
Absolutely.
So I wanted to finish with you, Clint, because we didn't get to hear the rest of your story. So share a little bit about your healing and hope now and what you are doing to live that unchained life now.
Well, the first thing I had to do was to learn how to trust a little bit, you
Mhm.
know. And as I'd again got more involved in the church, because again I got this message that I wasn't looking for my paternal father, but my heavenly Father, found him.
Mm.
He just continually impressed upon me and walked with me, and um, got rid of this anger. Actually, it was more than anger; it was rage and stuff. Got rid of the
Yeah.
rage because I still get angry today. I just deal with it differently.
Yeah. Right.
What if alcohol was my drug of choice, and we say that, well, Clint, you haven't used for X amount of time and you're an alcohol drug counselor. It's called alcoholism, not alcoholism.
Oh, I love that.
So
Yeah.
it's always there. And I got to tell you, and
Yeah.
especially for those that are listening, is to say, does it ever go away? um, I've spent 17 years in recovery, and stuff. And then I had this really beautiful coin that somebody, made me and stuff. And 3 or 4 days later, they noticed that I wasn't carrying a coin anymore. I was rubbing this little aluminum coin that said 24 on it. They go, "What's up with that?" I go, "Because that's where it starts and that's where it ends.
Mm,
24 hours."
24 hours.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's how I live, one day at a time.
Yeah.
By the grace of God, therefore go I.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's just so funny because again, Jeremiah 29:11. So I have plans for you. It's like, are you kidding me? Nobody had plans for me.
Mm,
And then to watch how God and me allowing Him to work in my life to change. In the first thing I had to understand really was what was this whole disease thing all about, and I really wanted to drive it home for people. And we could go into a whole different lecture about that, but
yeah.
plain and simple. And I heard it from a gal here that really brought it home. Is that it's dis-ease. So you go DIS, draw a line between the S.
Mm,
It's dis-ease. What has caused a dis-ease in your life?
mm,
Is
mm.
it, finances, legal, relationships, blah, blah, blah. How about the biggest one? The number one reason people relapse: stress. Stress.
Yeah. I believe it. Yeah.
And then we get into boredom and some other things and stuff. So I came into this with a heart that, for one, really cared about people, which was absolutely unusual for me because I didn't care
Yeah.
about anybody. I didn't want anybody to care about me either.
Yeah.
So I came into this here with an idea that no one cares how much you know until they know how much you
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
And I care about people.
Wow.
Yeah.
By the grace of God, you
By the
care.
grace of
Yes.
God, I care
Yeah.
about people. And so when we're walking around, and as Richie was saying, you got to give up, and stuff. And we start telling ourselves, well, that's impossible, or this is impossible. To quit my drug use is impossible. To mend my relationships are impossible. Everything's impossible. Slow your roll, because it kind of goes like this: with Christ in you
Mm,
and stuff. Because he says that through all things, through me, are possible.
possible.
And so if you're down in the dumps and you're feeling that way, that everything's impossible, I want you to write the word impossible on a piece of paper.
Mm,
And when we're done here, I want you to tape it on your fridge so you have something to look at, right?
mm-hmm.
Because we're tactile learners, right? I see, I smell, I hear, I
Mm,
taste, and we have to identify those as warning signs too, as far as triggers goes. But the thing with the word impossible and stuff is that if we draw a line between the M and the P,
mm-hmm.
now it's I'm possible.
Mm, I like that.
I'm possible.
Yeah.
And God is showing me that I'm possible,
Mm,
where I thought I'd never, ever be possible to be anything.
wow, Clint. How long have you been in the counseling role? How long have you been?
I started in 1993, my college studies. I graduated and started out in 1997. By 2000, though, I was already nationally certified as a relapse prevention specialist.
Okay.
And I was certified as an anger management specialist.
That's
I
awesome.
know.
I mean, isn't God good?
Awesome. He's
Yeah.
awesome.
God
And
is so good. I just, in all your story, it's like, from prison to prison ministries, from, anger as your drug, as the fuel for, a lot of
All
the
of it.
things that you did. Now you're anger management, you're
Mhm.
helping with anger management. And helping people in their struggles. So you've been doing that for what, over 20 years?
Oh,
Then?
yeah.
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 Wow.
Well, okay,
Wow.
so
Praise
I'm going to
God.
say something here that you don't even know, and this church don't know, but it was like from 97 up to about 2008. I mean,
Uh-huh.
not a drop of alcohol or anything like that. In
Wow.
2008, I went and chased money and got into scrap metal, which is a forte of mine,
Mhm.
and stuff. Made good money, got out of it and stuff. But while I was out chasing the money, I picked up and started using it again because I negated my program.
Wow. Okay.
So I stayed
Okay.
in my relapse for 7 years and nobody knew. The
Wow.
church didn't know. Nobody knew.
Wow, Clint.
I
And when
gave
you
it.
relapsed, what were you drinking and
Oh,
drug?
no, I never went back to drugs.
Okay.
I was drinking, and it
Just
started off
drinking.
casual, a few beers here and there, and then
Yeah.
from a few
Well, it
beers to
always
a pint
does.
to a fifth a day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
then,
then how did you get out of that?
me and my son went out drinking one night,
Okay.
and we were at a party, and old behavior stuff came in, and I
Sure.
seen it happening. But we went to a party. He left before I did, and I left 10 minutes after him. And I found him on a tree, and he was smashed. And he ended up spending 45 days in Harborview, where they saved his life.
What year was this?
That was in 2013.
Wow.
Haven't touched a drop since.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, my son is alive and he's well
Wow.
and stuff. And
Praise
I
God.
went and got my license back in 2014, 2015,
Okay.
and I've been dead on it ever since.
Wow. Wow. So, my final question would be, what message of hope, people who are watching now, they have been, some people may be struggling right now in the middle of it, coming out of it, maybe dabbled here and there, wherever they may be. What would be your message of hope to anyone watching tonight that they need that lifeline? What would be your message to them?
Well, we look for the hope,
Mhm.
and the hope is in if the opposite of addiction is community.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about the blessing and stuff, we are the blessing. We
Mm.
share our stories. We talk about again our lives, our it's not just the sad points; it's the good points. One of the things in the whole relapse process, we talk about all the negative, and one of the things that we don't necessarily plan
Mm.
on success.
Mhm.
Success could be a relapse trigger as well.
Mm. Mm.
So we just talk and we provide this hope and stuff. And I've always said that, hey, you don't believe in miracles? Go look in a mirror. You're looking at one. There's only one like you. So every time that I speak with people, whether it's a client on the phone or otherwise, in group or something like that, my main goal is to plant that one seed, that one grain of
like that.
hope
Yeah.
in their life,
Yeah.
so that they can, because hope helps us endure crisis.
right.
What's the crisis in your life? How can I help?
Yeah.
And mine is not to tell somebody what to do. Mine is to stimulate the mind to get them to believe that they need to do something
Yeah.
different in their
Yeah.
life. And I'm always going to direct them to God. And this is interesting too, because we go, God, I don't believe in that religion, God.
Mm.
Well, great. That's something you come to believe.
Mhm.
But what about if you take God and break it down as an acronym, and it stands for good, orderly direction?
Mm.
Because if you don't have good, orderly direction in your life, what do you have? Chaos.
Mm. Yeah.
So, are you willing?
Well, I love that, there's always hope. And that has been the message from almost every night. And every guest that we've had has said that there's always hope. And for you saying that, I always want to plant that little seed of hope. So we appreciate that for planting that little seed of hope tonight, Clint. We thank you for sharing your story, an amazing story with us, and how, God truly rescued you. So, truly, appreciate your time with us tonight and your story. And
My
we
honor.
appreciate And we appreciate you guys tonight. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you registering. And we have a winner for tonight's drawing, and that is Kim Willis. So, Kim, congratulations. Thank you for registering. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And we will make sure that you get your free gift, which is Richie's book, and a gift certificate as well. So we're super excited for you, and we'll make sure that we get that to you. Please remember that if you want to be entered into the drawing each night, to text Unchained to 534-444-7183. I have been richly blessed this evening, and I trust that you have been too. And again, thanks, Clint, for being with us. And don't forget to join us tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, when we'll look at our next breakthrough in breaking the chain of addiction. We will also be joined by Alex McIntosh. He'll be sharing with us his story, and we look forward to hearing that and how God has freed him from the chains that once held him back. And as always, as we close, we will leave you with a list of resources. So have a great evening. We will see you tomorrow night. God bless.
Yeah.